Coming up next, no ugly horses!
So many horses. Shoot them all. They're all ugly.
They shoot horses, don't they?
They do.
That's a title to something or other.
Well done, clever boy. Here's a sugar cube for you.
I'm a clever boy. Welcome to the Bookening. Oh, no. I have my lollipop. It's delicious. Nom, 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 nom.
Restart the episode,
The clever
please.
boy will have his clever boy treats.
What word?
I think the Mysterious Phantom's lover
Oh, no.
has
Please.
made his way to the show.
Guys, it's the Bookening opening that you've always dreamed of. It's finally happened.
That was what everybody's been waiting for.
People have been waiting for that. This is the Bookening. It's a show where we talk about books. I'm not ashamed to admit it. And my name is Nathan. I'm your humble and obedient host. We've got another clever boy,
No.
Brandon, right there.
Hi, guys. I hope Cormac McCarthy's listening.
I also hope that Cormac McCarthy is listening, and he probably just turned up the volume because he wanted to hear more.
The guy doesn't even own a computer.
Does he not? Does he type all this crap?
That's what somebody said. Apparently, well, we'll get to it.
No.
We'll get to it in context.
All right, we're going to get to it in context.
Oh, maybe. Who cares? It's not even a detail that's that interesting. Somebody started a fake Cormac McCarthy Twitter, and his publicist came out and claimed that it couldn't be Cormac McCarthy because he doesn't even own a computer.
Does he have a smartphone?
I don't know. But I wondered the same thing as soon as I read that. How does he write his books? And I couldn't find any information on it. So.
What's he going to do? Use a pen and paper?
Prose like this doesn't just happen automatically.
Elmore Leonard always said writing was worse in the age of word processors because it just made it easier, and it made it easier to rearrange and stuff, which meant you didn't have to think as hard as you came up with it, which I always thought was the dumbest theory that I'd ever heard in my life.
I've heard that theory before.
But maybe there's something to it.
I think there's something to it.
Yeah.
I think there's something to flow and there's something to thought. And I don't know.
We might have lost a little bit of that.
We might have lost something.
Yep.
Yeah, but we also got the ability to...
Yeah, no,
tweet.
we also gained a lot.
Mhm.
I'm not...
I guess it's the Dionysian bargain. No, I don't want Dionysian. Who do I want? Who's the guy that stole fire from the gods?
Oh, that guy.
What is that guy's name?
Crusty.
Promethean.
Yeah, it's the
There it is.
it's the Promethean bargain. There we go.
Procrastination's a word, too.
The
Yeah, it is. I was trying to pull Promethean.
What's the bed?
Yeah,
Procrastinate bed.
That's procrastinating bed. Okay. Yeah. So the Promethean bargain. We steal word processors from the gods.
Yep.
And in return, they take a little bit of our talent or something like that.
Yep. Well, you know who had some talent? You know who liked The Whale? Cormac McCarthy.
You mean Moby Dick?
His favorite book he claims is Moby Dick.
Or The Whale.
Or The Whale.
Well,
Good choice if that's really his favorite book. You know who he didn't like?
who's that?
Henry James.
Good choice to be a book that he hates.
I think that just in terms of style, I don't know who I would want to compare McCarthy to besides Melville.
Melville is obviously his forebear.
Melville and
Yeah.
Faulkner.
Yeah.
He's like you could throw those guys into a shaker and
Mhm.
shake them real well and then pour them out into a martini glass. You get Cormac McCarthy.
Put him in a blender, get a bloody pulp, and
Yeah.
that is Cormac McCarthy.
That's what
Through
you could-
and through.
Through and
Yeah, throw
through.
Melville in there and throw Faulkner.
Yep. Yeah.
A little bit of the New King James translators.
Mm-hmm. Add Marquis de Sade for spice.
Yep.
Mm-mm.
And Marquis de Sade.
No, he's not. He's not Sadian necessarily.
No, he's not.
He's certainly got a line in violence, and he's got a line in sexualized violence. But I wouldn't say he's like the Marquis de Sade. That's unfair. But I don't know who I'd say he's like. He's just his own thing.
He is.
Well, speaking of Cormac McCarthy, this is a podcast about him. It's hosted by me, Nathan Alberson, your humble and obedient host. We've got Brandon Chastain, the scholar who's a baller of books,
Yo.
right there. Brandon, if you were a horse, I dare say you'd be a pretty one.
Thank you, Nathan.
You're welcome, Brandon.
You would be pretty too.
Thank you. And the prettiest of all the horses is the man that you will now introduce.
He is the prettiest of all the horses.
Aw, thanks, guys. I feel so.
Objectified?
Jake,
There you go. That's the word.
your mane.
Is going between flattered and denigrated,
Yeah.
but I think objectified is correct.
Flattered, denigrated, and objectified all in one.
We do all
the
in one.
Bookening guarantee.
You're the one with the mane, if any of us has a mane.
Yeah, I've got a mane. I've got a. Like
You do have a mane.
A princely, lion-like mane. Wouldn't you guys say?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
very
definitely.
much, yeah.
Nay
Not-
for us.
not like a-
Nay.
Nay,
Nice.
nay, I shall not do that for thee. Bursts of fun and joy followed by long self-hating sighs. That's what this show has been reduced to. Did we actually introduce
No,
the prettiest horse of them all?
we haven't.
Okay.
I dare say
Yeah.
his name.
The unbridleable.
Do I dare say his name?
I dare say you do.
I dare say I do too. Does he dare say I do too? 3?
I R2D2 C3PO.
Nice.
Jack, this is where we first met.
Oh yeah, what was that whole thing?
Hold on.
I don't remember what the whole run was.
We had a.
It was amazing, whatever it was.
Oh my goodness. Bookening.
I can fly. Look, Jack, I can fly. Or something.
I can fly.
If somebody remembers, our person in
Somebody
our 10 by
could
10
find
room.
it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I can tell you what episode. It's Gilderstein is dead. No, it's not Gilderstein is dead. It's what are the two guys are waiting?
Rosencrantz alive.
Nah, it's the two buddies. They're waiting for Godot.
Yeah, waiting for Godot.
Waiting for Godot broke us.
That classic episode.
Yes. I think that was the episode that Waiting for Godot.
I can't go
deserved.
on.
Yeah. Oh, I will. Go
My
on.
heart will go on. Jack, this is where we first met. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a good chunk of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
All right, guys.
His name is Jacob Kyle Menzel.
It's true.
He is the pastor who's a master of reading.
Also true.
He's Beastmaster Funky Town.
That's the truest of them
This
all.
is very true.
What else is he? The one, the only, prettiest horse of them all.
The prettiest horse of them all.
Prettiest of horses.
Yeah.
This is going to be the name of my autobiography.
The
Prettiest of horses. And so I sat down on the porch. I took my wife's hand, and I realized I was the prettiest of horses.
Oh, man. I hope that's how your autobiography ends.
And she was like, why'd I marry a horse? What's wrong with me?
2 days later, I was divorced. All right. Guys, we're a little stir crazy. This has been a long recording day, but we're having fun. We had some delicious pizza at Pangea. I recommend it if you're coming through Evansville.
Mm-hmm.
But only water to drink.
Only water to drink.
I don't know why. I thought that was necessary to say.
We thought about
Why would it possibly be necessary to say
right.
that we've only had water?
It's not like
to
there's
drink
ever
today?
been
Oh,
any
coffee.
imbibing associated with this podcast.
Coffee.
Yeah, John Coffey.
Sin eater himself.
He did. And we strayed into casual racism. My job here is done. We're straight into casual racism. Yes, it is so fun. Because Brandon's a casual racist. He probably hates you.
Whoa.
Brandon's a casual racist. Racism, what is what Brandon does do.
It does do. That's right. That does do.
Does do.
We're poets here too, guys.
We are poets, and we are aware of that fact.
I did come home the other day for my daughter to be running around the front yard with a Confederate flag draped over her shoulders
No, you didn't.
like a cape. It's because it's something that we should have probably burned a long time ago. But in my homeschooling days, we made an American flag and a Confederate flag.
Right.
And it has just lingered around the house.
Now, when you say American
And
flag
Lucy
and
found
Confederate
it.
flag,
And decided this was a cape. And she was literally running around the front yard wearing this flag as a cape.
Oh.
Yeah.
now I know you well, Brandon. So I know when you say American flag and Confederate flag, what you really mean is two Confederate flags.
Yes, that's what I mean. The one with the "Don't Tread on Me" snake, which is the American flag. Oh boy,
Yeah. No. Brandon is proud to be American. He's not a racist. He loves.
not there on
Gadsden
January
and his flag.
6th. I was home.
Did you just say you were there on
I
January
was not there on January 6th.
I think he was.
I was at home with my family.
Mhm.
Probably. I don't actually know what day that was.
Right.
Ooh, that doesn't sound
That
good.
is January,
January
6th.
6th.
But like what day of the week? I could have been out in the field working. Yikes, guys.
Out in the field, quote unquote.
Yeah.
That's Brandon. He's a farmer. He's out in the fields working.
That's right.
Day to day. And there's casual classism.
Oh, man.
Brandon the farmer. I mean, Brandon, he could have been out in the field working, but
Aren't you going to sing a casual classism song, or are we going to accuse you of casual racism?
no,
for only doing it?
Brandon's
Yeah, racist.
casual classist. He hates all the poor. Brandon hates everybody. And then he hates some more. Blacks and Chinese and lepers too. Brandon thinks they all should be glue because Brandon, he's a racist and a classist.
Welcome all our new listeners.
Yeah, those new listeners gone yet?
Goodbye.
Hello and goodbye, new listeners. No, Brandon's the most racist thing that's ever been said on the Bookening probably was when I accidentally mangled that one guy's name, Chumbawamba or whatever.
Chinua Achebe.
Yeah, which I still don't know how to actually say his name, but we're not racists here on the Bookening. We're not racists. Brandon isn't fat. What else?
We're not racist.
Brandon isn't fat.
And that's how you judge the sincerity of everything.
Right. Through the lens of not racism and the lens of thinness.
That's right.
Oh, maybe we're fat phobic, though. That'd be a bad thing.
Uh-oh.
Well, speaking of fat phobic, we're not afraid of the PHAT fatness of Cormac McCarthy.
That's right.
An author that's totally off the hook, off the chain, radical, so totally righteous.
Tubular, dude.
Yeah, he's tubular, man. Let's talk about some Bookening Cormac McCarthy history.
Yeah.
So we have done, what
Well,
have
we've
we
not
done?
done anything. We started to do Blood Meridian,
Right.
and then we quit.
Yes.
Because we're lazy, good for nothings. That deserves 1 star.
Or we didn't want to subject anyone that we could still save from, the horrific violence and despair and nihilism of that most wonderful of books.
And now we don't care enough about anyone, so we're reading this and then also doing Jesus.
Now, Blood Meridian was a step too far. It was foolish of us to put it on the list.
Yes.
I have feelings and thoughts about whether I'm glad that I've read it that are complicated because it is magnificent in parts, just in the grand nihilistic poetry of it all. But it does simply cross a line when it comes to violence.
Yes.
Although some people would argue, well, maybe the people back then shouldn't have crossed lines into
Maybe
violence.
the Glanton gang.
Yeah.
And the,
I mean, he is writing about actual historical atrocities, although he's pushing things
yeah.
and sexualizing things in a way that I don't think is accurate. In any case, any more Blood Meridian litigation we care to do?
About Blood Meridian?
Or the fact that we almost did it, or the fact that we didn't?
No, I
or-
think that the justification is the episode. They can go back and listen to that.
Yeah, I suppose we covered it at the time.
But this is not the same book.
No, Cormac
Joking
McCarthy.
aside, this is not the same book. Dennis.
But
Jesus' Son, not the
I
same
had
book.
read a Cormac McCarthy prior to Blood Meridian, and I wasn't like, I had not read Blood Meridian.
Right.
Blood Meridian is a different animal.
Yeah, it's just different. It's not,
Yeah.
it is not the same.
Blood Meridian is the Moby Dick of ultraviolence.
Yes.
I mean, that's American ultraviolence, perhaps I should say. I mean, it is like, let's capture the great white whale, and the great white whale is man's inhumanity to man. It's just its own crazy thing, and it doesn't really. McCarthy has written other books that we wouldn't read. I'd say most of the stuff from his early period it crosses lines with the incest and things like that. But
Yeah.
later period, really starting with All the Pretty Horses, McCarthy is different. I mean, he kind of turned a corner. He suddenly started writing in a much more spare, simple style, although nothing's ever simple with Cormac McCarthy. But
The influence of Faulkner is much more evident in the early books.
yeah, it's like he got it out of his system with Suttree and Blood Meridian, and then he decided he was going to write, for him, very elegant, spare thrillers, which is kind of what No Country for the Old Men is, or All the Pretty Horses, or The Road, or
Yeah, the Border trilogy bridges the gap.
the Border trilogy.
Yeah,
Bridges,
bridges that gap. So
yeah.
there we go.
Yeah. Anyway, Cormac McCarthy,
Yeah.
he's inevitable. One of those modern greats that most people encounter one way or another that read books. I mean,
Yeah.
he's one of those guys who's pretty much ensured his place in the canon, even though he's still alive. It feels like people will be reading his books for a long time. New generations of disaffected young men looking for something provocative will discover No Country for Old Men or Blood Meridian or The Road. I think for many generations to come. And All the Pretty Horses is the romantic, kind of nice one that's also full of existential dread. I don't know. Let me stop giving a take because we got to talk about it. Here I am, like a jerk, giving a pre-frame. We should frame it together. So I think that leads us into context. What's that sound? It's the sound of the contextual Texan firing off his guns. Saying yeehaw like he just did. Brandon is from Texas, and he does provide some much needed.
Show him.
He sure is. Sure enough. And he does provide some much needed context on the work that we are discussing today. All the Pretty Horses and the Life of Cormac McCarthy. Take it away, Brandon.
All the books of the Border Trilogy are written in an unconventional format which omits traditional Western punctuation such as quotation marks and makes use of polysyndactic syntax in a manner similar to that of Ernest Hemingway.
He likes traditional Western cliches. He just doesn't like traditional Western punctuation. How about that?
Polysyndeton is a deliberate insertion of conjunctions
In
for the purpose
place
of
of
slowing
commas, right?
up the rhythm of the prose.
Yep, which I love. How do you say it?
Polysyndeton.
Polysyndeton is something that many of my favorite authors use. I'm always tempted to overuse it myself.
But and
the comma,
but
and not a particularly elegant thing. The comma, I don't love the comma. If it can be avoided, avoid it. Although I use many more commas than, for example, Jake, as two of the people whose work I've edited, myself and Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Jake tends to, if he can get away without that sort of thing, just get away without it. Like if he's using a contraction like, if I go to the store, I will pick up ham, then Jake will not put a comma there. I often will put a comma there just kind of for pacing, and not because I think it has to be there, but if I like the way that it sort of hits my ear, I'll use commas a little bit more. But in any case,
it's a very Millhauser thing of you to do, actually.
Jake
Yes,
is
that's right.
often known
Millhauser
as-
is very, like, if McCarthy's like, I'm going to take every single comma I can and put in an and or a but, it feels like, it's been a while since I read Millhauser, but just my memory of him is like, if there's an and or a but, I'm going to put in a comma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, my only philosophy of it is just do what sounds good.
Rhythm, cadence, and how it hits your ear.
Yeah.
Well, Jake is often known as the Cormac McCarthy of pastors.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah.
He sits scraping rocks and talking about how man was bred for war.
Yeah.
That's like the average sermon on a Sunday morning at Church
Pretty
of
much,
the King.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
You might die, you might not.
You might die.
You might die, you might not. Well,
You'll probably be chased by a naked guy across the desert before you're done.
Mm-hmm.
we already mentioned the Twitter thing.
Yeah.
It'll catch up to you in an outhouse.
Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff.
What? Yeah.
Did you never actually read that book?
What?
Blood Meridian.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I just heard the outhouse part. Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
The judge.
Old Brandon, his ear pricks up for outhouse.
Yeah, that's right. That's all I ever listened for is that word.
Somebody say home?
That's right. Oh, man.
Mama's cooking?
I spent many a fine time there. Okay.
Motherhood apple pie and outhouses.
Yep.
That's right.
Brandon's three favorite things. The one leads to the other.
Yeah.
The apple pie.
I like how
specifically.
interconnected all of life
Yeah.
is.
Life is just a apple pie to outhouse to apple pie.
Circle of life.
Time is a flat circle.
Right.
Oh, boy.
Jack, this is where we first met. Okay. Reset. Context.
Reset.
Go. We talked about Twitter.
Context.
Yeah.
McCarthy. He was born in not the South.
Was it Boston?
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
He came from Rhode Island.
About as not the South as you can get.
So therefore, he's a Northern writer. He's a Yankee.
I would like to call him a Southern writer.
You can't. That would be a wrong. 1 star for even having the thought.
But I consider him, since he everything is in Texas,
No.
and he lived most of his life in Tennessee.
Well,
if I'm not
Texas is
mistaken.
really its own thing with its own genre called Texas writing.
Oh, my
Then
bad.
you have Southwest writing. Then you have
Can I call him
South writing.
Can I call him a Southwest writer?
No, because Texas is not really the Southwest, apparently.
But he's also into Mexico and Arizona and stuff,
Yeah.
and even a little bit in California.
Yeah. You can't call him anything. You just got to call him, I guess, an American writer. but then he goes into
But is he,
Mexico.
though? Yeah, I mean,
So I guess you have to
don't
call
know.
him an
international,
international writer.
cosmopolitan writer.
He's a cosmopolitan.
We put our finger
There we
on
go.
it.
The great cosmopolitan. This should make
nailed
everybody
it.
happy. This should make everybody happy. The great cosmopolitan writer, Cormac McCarthy. He got his start by writing articles for Cosmopolitan.
Yes. He can make a great Cosmo, I hear.
Yeah. According to this, he's written only one essay. This is really funny. This page I have up here, this says he wrote 12 novels, sure, 3 stories, 2 plays, and one essay. It's like, okay. I can't imagine he's written anything other. Well, this they say he's Southern Gothic, Western, and post-apocalyptic is what he's written.
Oh, so anytime you dabble in any genre, that has to be added to the descriptors of...
I guess.
If you're Cormac McCarthy, and you're the greatest living writer.
Yeah, then you must be the greatest
I know is
living post-apocalyptic.
I mean, none of us look like that.
Ooh, my goodness.
Yeah,
That's
look at
old
that
Cormac
guy.
there, man.
Magnum P.I. There's no pun to make there.
Magnum meow.
Magnum Meow. Yes, sir. No, he's a very good-looking guy. Brendan pulled up a picture, I'm going to say, from the 70s, probably?
Yeah, he looks like,
Hey, I found it.
70s tough guy.
The essay?
The review, the 1-star review.
Oh, read it, yeah.
Yeah, people should understand this is the context of why we all went on that angry riff there.
The title of the review is, it's the face, the emoji with the,
Like grinning?
no, like eek face, I don't know. And it says, didn't finish the book, they said.
Mm-hmm. That's what
By Ayn Ranaway.
Oh, no. 1 star for
1 star.
stupid libertarian name.
I listened to the ep on Blood Meridian. They harp on how interesting it is that Cormac wasn't from the South, born in Rhode Island.
We
A
harp
simple
on that?
Wikipedia article with citation and math talks about how he moved to Tennessee, which is in the South, when he was 4, born 33, moved in 37. I spent ages 1 to 6 in South Carolina, but moved and live in Philly, but I don't call myself Southern. I know Philly very well. Cormac likely doesn't know much about Rhode Island compared to Tennessee.
Did we make a
Suttree,
big deal
his
about
closest
this?
thing, I doubt it. Suttree, his closest thing to an autobiographical novel, takes place in Knoxville. That's my first issue with these guys. They seem
What?
to jest at Cormac. They're on a first name basis. And they seem to jest at Cormac and how he wasn't authentically Southern, in that at least Faulkner was from Mississippi. So by this logic, if I was born in Kenya, but as soon as I popped out, was flown immediately to America and never left, never returned to Kenya, I'd forever be a Kenyan. The other main reason I write this, they didn't finish reading the book. This is a book review podcast. My cousin writes for a religious newspaper, and this reminds me of when he wrote a movie review for Brokeback Mountain. He didn't see it. While these guys read part of Blood Meridian or read some summary like a high schooler who couldn't be bothered to read, they didn't finish it.
Uh-huh.
I understand if you don't finish a hard book and are not a book reviewer by trade. But basically, them stating they didn't finish it is like me buying cooking ingredients, maybe bake a crust, then telling people how the pie tasted and saying I'm a chef. Well,
What?
I got halfway through the podcast and didn't finish it. So
my favorite metaphor.
I guess we're even.
Did Cormac McCarthy himself write this?
But I'm not a podcast reviewer.
Well, yeah, you're not.
Oh my goodness.
That was better than I remembered it.
I don't know.
So they took
It's much
issue
better.
with us apparently making a big deal about something I can't imagine we made a big deal about.
I'm sure we.
Well,
I'm
what
sure
was just
we
in
laughed about
passing,
it.
we just said,
Well,
he was
so
from
it's
Rhode
just
Island.
that one review about McCarthy, but it got paired with this one about a Shakespeare that came right away. So we had those 2 1-star
Yeah, that's
reviews
right.
in a row, and so it amplified it in our mind. I'll go ahead and read that because I think that's fun.
It was like a 1-2 hit against my lack of attention to detail.
This podcast isn't about books. I mean, it's vaguely about books in that they read a quick wiki summary of an author and usually get several details wrong. For instance, did you know Queen Elizabeth died in 1613, just 3 years before Shakespeare?
Idiots.
Brandon, off the top of his head, said 1613 instead of 31. If I'm not mistaken, just inverted the numbers.
Oh man, better get it right. Actually, who cares?
Then discuss a work of literature and swiftly pronounce said work as a good or a bad book based on the degree of Christian values it upholds. Yep, that's how we do things here. By approaching each work of literature with no sense of charity or openness toward having their preconceived notions about the world challenged, The hosts handicap each episode and turn it more into an exercise in proselytization.
Mm-hmm.
See, they're right.
Yeah,
I can't
nice
read.
mispronunciation.
I can't read. I mean,
plus I just said mispronunciation.
I understand if books are hard and you can't read. Into an exercise in proselytization, in affirmation of their own faith and anything resembling a love of literature. I had high hopes since this is one of the few podcasts which delves into classic lit, but I found it ultimately disappointing.
Well, there you have it.
There you have it.
We are ultimately disappointing.
I'm sorry to be ultimately disappointing.
You know whose early life was ultimately disappointing?
Who's that?
Cormac McCarthy.
Oh, do tell.
Oh boy, do we really want to talk about his life?
Yeah.
We have to.
Ayn Randian. What's the name of Ayn Randian?
Ayn ran away.
Oh,
Ayn ran away. Oh.
Ayn ran away is waiting
with
bated breath.
My goodness. Why would you name yourself after one of the worst overrated writers in American history?
She wasn't overrated. She understood economics and our
human nature,
man. 1 star.
She's on the short list of if I could choose writers that I could blink and have disappear
if you could Thanos
from all history. She would be on the short list of writers I would do that to. Because I think she's done more harm than good.
I mean,
and she was really bad.
She's right up there with Dostoevsky in terms of, I have had to watch as friends have been destroyed by this person's philosophy and gone into bitterness, anger.
Yeah, I've never actually read Ayn Rand, but I've seen the same thing. And it's not that I'm even opposed in principle to certain aspects of her philosophy, but everybody that I know that's been super into her is self-destructed. That is a fact.
I have read one of them, Fountainhead, I think, and I just think she's poison. I suppose we could do an Ayn Rand book sometime just to kind of cross it off our list, but
that'd be a short one though. All her books are long.
Yeah, all her books are so long.
I think Anthem might be fairly short.
So didactic oh my goodness. Okay.
Cormac McCarthy.
Cormac McCarthy had a life. A disappointing early one.
He had 3 wives.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. He's got 2 kids. He was divorced twice. No, 3 times because he's not married anymore.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Seemed like such a well-adjusted guy.
Yeah. Well, all right. Let's talk about this guy.
All right.
So he was born in 1933.
1933. That's a long time ago.
Yeah. And he was born in Rhode Island.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting?
Yep. You know what? I'm just going to imagine what we did. I'm going to imagine you said that. And then I said, a northern writer. And then we all giggled and we
said, hey, it's interesting that he's from Rhode Island.
We did a bit. I'm guessing we did a bit for like 3 minutes.
Well, here is what I found interesting about him is the fact that, so he moved with his family to Knoxville. His dad was a lawyer. And so they actually lived in kind of the wealthy neighborhood, grew up Irish Catholic. And so the whole mythos that he has, I think, of himself being someone who, he wasn't like Dennis Johnson in the sense that he actually lived this life.
He doesn't sound like the poet laureate of cowboy.
Until he chose to take this on himself.
Yeah.
And so when he was finally where he got out of his father's house and was able to go and kind of pursue the life that he wanted. See, I think that, let's not get some of these details wrong here, right, guys? So he went to University of Tennessee for a while, and then he joined the United States Air Force. And
was he part of a conflict?
No, but he went to Alaska. So this would be 53. When was the Korean War?
I think Korea would have been going during that time, but
I think that's right.
But he was stationed up in Alaska, and this is when he claims this is the first time in his life that he started really getting into reading. And he published a couple stories in the University of Tennessee's student magazine, won a couple awards, but then that was kind of it for writing for him for a while.
Huh.
It was during this period that he took on the name Cormac.
What's his birthday?
Charles, or Charlie. Apparently there was a ventriloquist dummy.
Charlie McCarthy, sure.
Charlie McCarthy, and he didn't like the fact that he could be associated with the ventriloquist dummy. So he had to change his name to Cormac. Probably after the guy who built Blarney Castle, I think, is the Cormac who built that, a king or something.
I have no idea.
Irish chieftain. So anyways.
Sounds more Scottish.
But yeah, so.
Sounds more pirate to me.
Cormac.
So he grew up in a wealthy neighborhood. He grew up in the.
Sorry.
We're back. Are we back? Can we keep going?
That was not the sound effect I thought it would be. But yes, keep going.
Oh. Hi, guys.
Hi, sorry about that.
Yeah, so he grew up he was fairly well off with his dad, went to University of Tennessee. So he had to actively rebel against everything in his youth so that he could become the kind of guy who would eventually, with his first wife, be living in abject poverty in a trailer where they were having to take baths in a pond.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, man. The more I read about this guy, he kind of, his prose is wonderful. His stories are great, but he himself just kind of drives me up the wall because it seems like he's had to inflict his suffering on himself.
Yeah.
He has had to try and make himself into the suffering artist.
Right.
And it doesn't help that won't ever give an interview, so you actually don't know who he is. He's this mythology that's built up around him. And every interview he's given is a weird one. And it's really hard to distinguish what the truth is. He hates other literary figures. Yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, in the timeline, in your timeline, folks, Jesus' Son episode hasn't come out. In our timeline, we already recorded it. And Dennis Johnson is a guy who feels like, he just had his demons. And then by God's grace, he was good at writing about them. But he was always driven and consumed by them one way or another, which feels really authentic and cool compared to Cormac McCarthy being like, crap, I need some demons. What are my demons? I guess these will be my demons.
And he would win the awareness. The literary world was aware of his existence.
Right.
So in 79, he publishes Suttree. That's not even his first one, though. It's in the mid-70s, he publishes Orchard Keeper, right? Is that right? When was Orchard Keeper? Oh, no, earlier than that, 65.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize he'd been active that long.
That's when he was like 32. So he publishes his first novel in his early 30s. It wins some credit with the literary world. I think it won the William Faulkner Foundation Award. When it was released, actually, critics noted how similar it was to Faulkner. So you had this heavy influence. And if people don't know anything about Faulkner, is kind of a high modernist writer who kind of created what's called Southern Gothic. Flannery O'Connor would take that and run with it. But Faulkner's influence over Southern literature, if you think of Southern literature, Faulkner is the father of it, where you take the idea of the South post-Civil War and its attempt to deal both with the loss of the Civil War and the ghosts of the Confederacy, and also the reality of slavery and its manifestation as both guilt and as both something that still exists within the South. And so that's pretty much Faulkner. And he deals with that through psychological drama. And so As I Lay Dying, which we've done on this podcast.
Sure have.
And have we done any other Faulkner?
That's the only Faulkner we've done, and it's one of the only books that, for whatever reason, I never ended up finishing.
Yeah,
you weren't even on. Were you even on that episode?
No, I just think I ran out of time.
Yeah, that was a weird anomaly. I mean, yeah. Oh well.
Anyways,
it just sticks out in my mind as a regret that it's one of
Well, we'll probably
one of the only things
Faulkner
that we've
eventually.
done that I didn't finish.
Right.
We should go back with Absalom or something.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before you go on, Brendan, just a quick note of trivia.
Yeah.
You said his first novel came out 65. Just that means that W. Somerset Maugham died the same year that Cormac McCarthy's first novel came out.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. And so he's writing in the 60s. He gets some credibility. The literary world grows rather fond of him, and then he publishes Suttree, which is loosely autobiographical about his adventures that he had with this one friend on the river in Tennessee. But even that, it's more like borrowing stories from others, because he, again, was the rich lawyer's kid. But still, he was the rich lawyer's kid who also didn't want to take his schooling seriously, and so would go and hang out with the people that he wanted to be with.
Yeah.
Right. But he's like building who he wants to be. During this period, he's married. He marries a girl he met in university, and universities would offer him positions to come and speak. Like they would say, take $2,000 and come talk to us about your books. And he would turn these offers down because he said, everything you need to know about my books are in the books themselves. So he's turning down money. And then at the same time, he asks his wife if she would go and get a job so that he could write. And so she gets fed up and leaves him, which good for her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But let's see. This is when finally he gets a Rockefeller grant, which allows him to travel. And then he writes Outer Dark, which is actually before Suttree. Anyways, he's building his name. You have Child of God come out, and then around that time is when he decides to move to El Paso, Texas. And that's, I think, where he still is to this day, right? He's out in El Paso. And so he doesn't even get to El Paso until 76. So if he was born in 33, that puts him at 43 when he finally gets to the place that he's kind of really associated with from 76 onward. Anyways, and it's after that he does begin to have some success. He gets involved with a PBS writer who wanted him to write a story for some series they were doing on television. And then finally he got a huge, what is it called? The Guggenheim or award or whatever. It's like the equivalent of $235,000 today that he gets awarded. And that was a big deal for him. It finally freed him up to become the Cormac McCarthy we know today. His first big success was Blood Meridian. The MacArthur Fellowship is what it was, is that he got. Here it is. And Saul Bellow, a guy that we had been talking about earlier, and Shelby Foote, they were ones that really argued that he should get it. Fought for him to get it. Yeah, they saw his promise. And it was actually after he got this Genius Award that he wrote Blood Meridian, which would make his name. And even though it kind of had mixed reviews, certain critics saw the promise that was in it. Harold Bloom famously thought it was one of the most important pieces of American literature written.
They said it took him 3 times to actually read it because he was so put off by it. And then when he finally forced himself to, he found a masterpiece there.
Really?
Yeah.
Probably after he realized that it was becoming something that he should pay attention to.
Yeah, so let's not...
Can't not have his name associated with...
Yeah, that's funny. I did not know that. That's interesting.
I mean, Harold Bloom did do a lot for it. I mean, he was like he was the champion of that book.
Yeah, but you just wonder what got him to realize that. Like, it's probably the right people having liked it before him. Mm-hmm. That's really curious.
He knew, he sensed the winds blowing and
wanted to take advantage of that. Well,
that's a very cynical take on Harold Bloom.
That is
such a cynical take.
Yeah.
Anyways, all this to say that
I sense you don't have very much respect for him. Or his critical capacity.
Yeah. Oh, good old Harold Bloom.
Good old Harold Bloom.
Bloom and Onion.
Yep. Bloom Meridian.
Yeah. Bloom Meridian.
Bloomsbury. Bloomsbury.
Yeah.
Madame Bloomsbury.
I guess the big point to take away from here is that he's like...
Sorry.
Barry Lyndon.
I mean, as cynical as this sounds, he decided he wanted to be a writer, and that's what he committed himself to during the 70s and 80s.
I mean, I'll push back a little bit. I think lived experience is great. Most of the great authors have some.
Yeah.
But there are great authors who have had nothing like the experience that they write about.
That's
Shakespeare would come to mind. They're just able to empathetically put themselves in the shoes of characters and of situations and of times and places.
I think that the people he admired and the people that he met during this period influenced what he wrote.
Right.
And so even though he didn't get those experiences necessarily directly himself, even though he would get some, just because he lived in El Paso, he would go and be with these people. And he's so closed off and reclusive that we really don't know what he does with his spare time.
Yeah.
Right? Who knows what he was out there doing?
Right.
But anyways, he obviously sure he wasn't born and raised as a cowboy and all these sorts of things, but he had to somehow get these experiences.
He knows the smell of leather, like he's got it from somewhere. He does a good job of faking it.
And he's a natural cynic, and he doesn't like the literary world, which actually I give him credit for. So I don't think he ever cared that Harold Bloom liked him. Mm-hmm. But he did become friends with a guy named Edward Abbey. We talked about this at lunch, not with the people on the podcast. They didn't go to lunch with us.
No, they didn't.
But Edward Abbey was a guy who was an environmental writer, but kind of crotchety and a cynic about it, where he didn't like the other liberals and just had weird ideas. But he has a wonderful book called Desert Solitaire. Mm-hmm. And so they became friends in the 80s, and they hatched a plan where we're going to release wolves into Arizona or something like that, which sounds fun. Mm-hmm. And so, but that was like his only literary friendship. He writes Blood Meridian. It takes a while to sort of establish itself, but it's in the early 90s, actually the same year that Jesus' Son was published, that All the Pretty Horses is published. So they come out in the same year, 92. And this sells immensely, 190,000 copies. So he's got his MacArthur Fellowship, and this sells like hotcakes. And the rest is history as far as Cormac McCarthy goes. He writes his Border trilogy after that. And then actually, he's not overly prolific. Let me pull up his bibliography or his bibliography here. He wrote those all in the 90s. And then it's like 2005 is when No Country for Old Men comes out. And then the Coen brothers, they find a kindred spirit, and arguably one of the few movies about a great book that might arguably be better than the great book.
I think it does. I think that they take a lot of stuff that's adolescent.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound snobby, but I think they take a lot of stuff that's immature about McCarthy and ditch it and only keep what tells a great epic story.
So like you could arguably say that if you want a good dose of McCarthy without ever reading McCarthy, just go watch No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Because it's geniuses reflecting a genius. Anyways, so then you have The Road that comes out in 2006, and then he's been silent for like 16 years, and now finally we're getting 2 new releases that we actually have already talked to. We're going to talk about one. Have we announced that?
No, spoiler.
Uh-oh. Plug your ears.
Plug your ears. We're going to do the
I didn't say
Passenger.
anything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, The Passenger.
Yeah.
You just said it.
Yeah, but we'll announce it later.
But we'll announce it officially later.
Yeah.
But you heard it here first. We'll see how many people actually make it through my context and how many fall asleep.
It's a great context.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So anyways, some other things. So he's really into, where is he now? He's part of this thing called the Santa Fe Institute or something like that?
It sounds familiar, but I don't know.
I read this. I was reading this one thing about him. So, the parking lot at the Santa Fe Institute. Yeah, I got it. You see rows of vehicles typical of American academia, SUVs and minivans. And then there's this old Ford F-150 or Ford F-350 diesel engine. And they're like, who could this possibly belong to? And you have all these scientists that are there together, and it's like a think tank for science. And then you have Cormac McCarthy, who is also a part of this.
My brain just heard think tank.
Think tank.
But you said think tank, right?
I said think tank.
Okay.
He's a part of this think tank. Now he's surrounded by all these scientists, and he says he likes scientists more than he likes literary people. And so that's why he's part of it. And he just released an essay about the unconscious mind, where he argues that the unconscious mind is like the motor that drives the animal, but language is just almost like this secondary feature of humanity that doesn't really explain anything about us, or something along those lines. That it's our unconscious drive that determines who we are.
Right.
And it's our animal instinct. And that probably explains quite a bit of his writing. But anyways, the book we're talking about today, All the Pretty Horses, it's part of the Border trilogy that kind of locked him in as a great American writer. I think it's because of the Border trilogy that he had the Renaissance that brought about, not the Renaissance, what do you call it? Where people just re-engage his former works. And Blood Meridian then was kind of brought up as, well, it's actually, you thought the Border trilogy was great, but actually he had this gem before that. And so here, and so in the 90s are what made him. And so All the Pretty Horses is kind of the book that established this man who is now a giant of American letters as the giant that he is. And so we're reading it, and we're going to talk about it. Talked a little bit about the Southern Gothic. This is, I think, like you said, Nathan, where he establishes his own voice in a way that he hadn't before, in the sense that
he had an established voice before, but he changes it to a different
It changes
voice.
here, and like Blood Meridian is kind of a transitional piece, but even that's pretty heavily influenced by Faulkner, right? And Faulkner's all over that as well.
And Melville.
And Melville and the New King James Bible, all these things that just had heavy influences over his early works. To where the distinct style that is Cormac McCarthy.
You meant the King James Bible. You didn't mean the New King James Bible.
Yeah, I meant the King
star.
James Bible.
The authorized version.
The King James Bible. Yeah, just
one star.
Shoot me.
Big NKJ reader.
And so this is where his voice becomes clearly distinct from, I think, those other voices. And so you can see this a lot with writers, actually, and it seems to be that they're transitional pieces, that where they're getting their footing is the one that's often seen as their great masterpiece. So Midnight's Children for Rushdie, Remains of the Day by Ishiguro, and then this Blood Meridian for...
there is the karma, the energy, the feeling of discovery that gets locked into certain works, and it does make them pop in a way that you just can't fake.
But you can't... So outside of Blood Meridian, this is definitely his most important work as far as understanding Cormac McCarthy. His most accessible work probably is The Road.
Successful?
Accessible.
Oh, accessible. You wouldn't say this?
This might be, but people tend to really like The Road.
Yeah.
The Road was the one that was introduced to me long before
Yeah.
But I bet you like this one better.
I feel like I do, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I think I'd heard of The Road in,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. This is like my 20s. Somebody hands me a copy of The Road and says, you should read this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The Road was that moment where everybody was kind of discovering Cormac McCarthy and our circles and right.
Yeah, kind of the 1-2 punch of No Country for Old Men, the movie.
And they had The Road.
Which a certain kind of young man really liked.
It had a movie
me.
too.
With Viggo
Mortensen.
Aragorn.
Which I've never seen and I understand isn't great, but
I've never seen it.
It's not the greatest movie.
Anything else in the context?
No Children of Men.
No, it's not.
Did you like Children of Men?
I love Children of Men.
Yeah.
The movie.
Children of Men is by far the better post-apocalyptic movie, but
maybe the best post-apocalyptic movie.
I think it might be.
You'd be hard-pressed to name a better one.
Yeah.
Mad Max Fury Road, maybe, but that's more like a fun adventure kind of thing. Okay. Context done?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, if you got some more.
No, I wanted to make sure we talked about Faulkner and all that stuff. We already did that, so
yep,
we're good to go.
A rose for Emily.
Yep.
All right. And what's that sound? In stereo? That's not in stereo. It's just in life. So it's flying overhead from left to right. It's the baggage plane, which indicates the part of the show where we talk about our baggage. Jake, what baggage do you bring to Cormac McCarthy, Charles McCarthy?
In my 20s, at some point, a friend gave me a copy of The Road, and I read it and thought that was fine. That was different. Still have images from it in my head. Haven't watched the movie. We came to Blood Meridian together, decided to quit it. I did go back and finish it at some point, and that is what it is. That's really it. Like, I mean, I guess I have a lot of respect for his style and his ability.
He's one of those guys who's what would one say, a high populist. I mean, he's everybody who actually, you have to actually like books. Like the average man on the street might not like Cormac McCarthy.
You have to like to read.
But if anyone likes to read, they've read him and they think he's awesome. So it's easy on a podcast like this to want to push back a little bit. And I don't necessarily mind that instinct. I think it's a healthy one to say. I mean, as I've said before many times on this podcast, when something's really popular, it's worth asking why. And it's worth even maybe having a 4%, not in a nasty way, but having a little bit of a prove it, a little bit of an antagonistic spirit going like, okay, you're really popular. Why? Why does everybody love this? Not antagonistic. That's the wrong word, but you know what I'm saying. Brandon, your Cormac McCarthy baggage.
I read Blood Meridian as an undergraduate, and then liked it enough to read all the Border trilogy. And I think I came to him because of Flannery O'Connor, weirdly enough, getting into kind of Southern literature. Found him, and then I've read most of his books. So,
was he going to be a part of your dissertation at one point, or was that just Faulkner?
Yeah, he was. The Orchard Keeper was going to be my opening. So, yeah, I like him. He was great. And I'm kind of now approaching him as an older man, and there's a lot of youthful attractions to him that don't still do it for me, but his prose is amazing.
Yeah, he's a great writer.
Yeah.
Ain't no disputing that.
And I kept up with his other stuff, The Road and all that, as it came out. So
yeah, I think I've read all the popular ones that people read, all the Pretty Horses, The Road, I haven't read all the Border trilogy. I've only read the first one, but
I thought about the Border trilogy after I finished this one.
It's good. It's nice to see what happens to John Grady Cole.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to
about what you would expect.
Yeah, probably some sort of existential longing, and then a sad end. That's my guess.
Yep.
Blood Meridian was pretty seminal for me, for better or worse. I mean, the judge, he's one of the great villains.
And Ahab. Who else you got?
Dracula.
Macbeth.
Yeah,
Mr. Bennett.
Mr. Bennett. Yeah. C.S. Lewis.
Kathy.
C.S. Lewis, Kathy, and the judge. No, I mean, I tend to enjoy the Western thing when it's done well. I like John Wayne. I like spaghetti Westerns. I like that kind of stuff. I like stories where everything gets stripped away and all you have is your guts and your survival, and things become primal. I like them when they attain the status of myth. I like American myth making. I like things that are larger than life. I don't like Western stories when they're just kind of, well, this is what it was like to be in the Old West. Lots of people were dying of syphilis, and like Deadwood, for example, has never had any appeal for me because it demythologizes the West, and I actually don't like seeing the West demythologized. I would say that's distinct from what Cormac McCarthy's doing. I think he's I guess you could call what he does demythologizing, but I don't think it really is because I don't know. Well, whatever. We can talk about it. Anyway, I've read all the Cormac McCarthy stuff that everybody's read. I like him. I think he's pretty great. I think can be juvenile and problematic in ways that I'm sure we'll talk about. And I don't know that I have any more interesting things to say about my relationship to the guy. I'm sure I probably read him young enough that I was tempted to try and write like him. I mean, he is one of those annoyingly infectious
He's very infectious.
people. Yeah. And I'm sure it was crap if I did. But yeah, Cormac McCarthy. What a guy. What a guy. This is my second time reading All Country for Pretty Men.
All Country. Yeah, this is my second time too. I think the only one I haven't read is Suttree.
Yeah, which is supposed to be, for people that really like what he does, one of the ones that you'll really like.
Yeah, I mean, it's his autobiography, basically, right?
Yeah. Jake was so excited by the idea of reading Suttree that his headphones, like a cartoon character, popped off.
They did. They flipped off.
Flipped off and flew across the table. That's literally what happened.
Well, I was giving one of my ears a break, and I just had it offset, and then something happened with I don't know what happened.
I think
weird.
Just listening to me describe my relationship with Cormac McCarthy, your brain grew 2 sizes.
And just caused my headphones to spring off my head. It makes sense.
That's my theory.
It's pretty cartoonish.
It was the kind of thing that would happen to a cartoon character if they were really excited about something. Well, guys, speaking of being excited, I am excited to give our big picture thoughts on all the pretty horses. So what do you guys think? Big picture wise.
It's got all them pretty horses in it.
Got all
I
the pretty
enjoyed
horses.
Yeah.
It was a fun read. I mean, I don't know. I think part of my read of it was, well, I'm glad this doesn't have all the garbage of Blood Meridian in it, but also
It loses a little interest because it doesn't have the garbage of something like
it
that.
just doesn't quite attain to Blood Meridian in terms of its beauty, poetry, striking, anything. But it was still really good and really good.
I mean, I would say it's one of those books that the story is such a genre story. I mean, there is nothing to it. It's just true love. And
There's a reason it became a Matt Damon
Well,
movie.
he's such
Exactly.
Yeah, he's such a nihilist, though. That I just
yeah,
although the nihilism doesn't come through as much here as it does maybe certainly in Blood Meridian. I was going to say maybe The Road, but The Road actually
has a weirdly hopeful
has
place it goes.
It's like it's the only one of the 3 that has a hopeful sort of.
But it's also got barbarians eating babies or whatever it is.
Yeah,
So,
the cannibals, man.
the cannibals, man. I don't know. It's weird to look at this book as an older man. It's just like, man, it is so simple. And there's not really much meat on that bone. There's like beautiful things that he's describing, and the way that he evokes it all is wonderful. And some of the conversations with the grandmother, I would say, attain a kind of psychological complexity, or, you know, they're kind of interesting in the same way that the judge or Anton Chigurh or some of those characters in his famous books are interesting. But man, there's just nothing to this book. He falls in love with the most beautiful woman in the world, and then that love is snatched away from him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he fights some dudes and takes revenge on the one dude that was the most mean to him.
Yeah.
And then that's the book.
That's it. Yeah.
Like it is such a cheapy B-Western of a plot. Like
Coming of age,
yeah,
baby.
He comes of age. He's a little wiser, a little sadder, missing some teeth, and the globe keeps spinning.
And now the little boy who just wanted to get away because the ranch was being taken away from him is now the hardened Lone Ranger out there on the plains.
Yeah. I mean, for a guy that is so exaggerated in the way that he writes, so ornate, so over the top, even in something like this that is more Hemingway-esque, Cormac McCarthy trucks in a lot of understatement. He's very cinematic. He never tells you what his characters are thinking. He just tells you what they do. I mean, very rarely, at least. He's just like, John Grady. It almost reads like a screenplay, a very weird poetic screenplay. John Grady went over and smoked a cigarette. He thought for a while. It's just like action, 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 action. I think there's something primal about that, something that allows you to kind of plug into it because you're not actually getting any psychological depth. It's like we always talk about with Luke Skywalker or something, like there's nothing there. So you can just be your own John Grady and kind of read into it whatever you want. But it also maybe felt a little shallow to me this time. Like, oh, he actually doesn't really have much to say about who John Grady is. He doesn't have much to say about, certainly doesn't have any interest in defining who this young woman is.
Alejandra.
Yeah, Alejandra. She's just the most beautiful woman to have sex with in a lake.
Yeah.
And I liked Rollins, or no, what's the name of his best friend?
Rollins is his best friend, and Blevins is the other one.
Blevins is the kid that gets them into the mess.
Rollins and Blevins are good sort of Western supporting characters, from the school of, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or a Clint Eastwood movie or something. Like, you got the kid, the impetuous kid, and the dumber, complaining best friend guy.
Yeah.
And they're fine, but minus the grandmother, who is really interesting, there just wasn't a lot to this book, which isn't really a complaint, I don't think. I mean, it's just, I was surprised to go back, read it, and realize, oh, he was actually aiming pretty low. Like, he wasn't trying to do a lot. He just
I don't think psychology and stuff is really his thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't really, for as interesting, the stories are more about Cormac McCarthy than they are really about the characters.
But metaphysics and philosophy often is, and
that's what I mean, is that, like, even in the other books, like The Crossing, it's more, though I think The Crossing is actually my favorite of the Border trilogy, but it's not about John Grady Cole.
Right.
Only the Cities of the Plain and All the Pretty Horses are about them. The Crossing is about two brothers who go over to Mexico together. It's good, but I think that's where you have the most character development. Like, I'm thinking about No Country for Old Men. There's not a whole lot of character development in that book. The father and son and the road, they're fairly one-dimensional. You know what I'm...
Yeah, but like with No Country for Old Men is a good example. It's very simple, but the unrelenting fatalism of the villain is really memorable in and of itself.
It's more the big ideas and concepts.
Right.
It's not a surprise that he loves scientists so much. He was accepted into the American Academy of Philosophers or something like that. So he is more... Dennis Johnson is more interested with character. Mm-hmm. He's more interested with big ideas.
Big ideas. And many of his books have them.
Yeah.
I mean, Blood Meridian has things to say, whether you like it or not. It has things to say about colonialism, about war, about all this stuff. And so it feels like, even if you don't agree with it, even if you don't like it, even if you think some of it's juvenile, there are often these big ideas at play. There's just nothing like that in All the Pretty Horses. There's a nice Hemingway-esque sense of doom. He does what Hemingway wanted to do with that stupid hospital scene that we all dunked on, and with the woman dying at the end of the book that I still can't remember the name of.
Farewell to Arms.
Farewell to Arms. Like Cormac McCarthy, what Hemingway tries so hard to do and ultimately we thought failed at, Cormac McCarthy does in his sleep in this book. Just that sense of, man, it would be nice if it worked out, but that's just not the way life works. Sorry, John.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this book is, in some ways, for that reason, maybe the most affecting of Cormac McCarthy's books that I've read. It's very sad.
Well, it's also because, in the end, that's just a part of the story. It's not really the main part of the story, right?
Yeah.
She's out of the story well before the ending.
It's just the making of John Wayne's character and the Searchers.
Right.
Right. Like, it's just like, it's the backstory.
Mm-hmm.
It's this is the girl that he's always sort of staring off into the sunset as he stands in the doorway.
Yep. The thing that he could never have, the unattainable object.
Yep. This is his first kill. This is his first, whatever else. This is just like the sad story that made him the American anti-hero. And we know that movie.
Yeah.
We don't get the coming of age of that character, and this is what that is.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And yeah, that's a nice take. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a nice take, but it also explains what I find sort of reductive about this book is that, well, actually there's every Ethan Edwards from The Searchers has the same backstory, and it's ultimately, there's not much to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I sound like I'm criticizing the book. I'm really not. I loved it. It's a good read. I recommend it unreservedly.
By the time she's out of the story, you still have this much left to go.
Yeah.
The whole scenes with the captain and all that stuff still.
Yeah.
And the prison stuff is pretty great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I think this is his most popular book maybe his most accessible because of the love story, but that's not really. It is about the making of this John Wayne character.
Right.
Yeah. And then Cities of the Plain kind of wraps it up. And it's also about, which all his books are, how can the old West and the new West coexist?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they can't really. That's the whole point, is that the violence and the free life of the cowboy can't coexist with the new America.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's in essence what No Country for Old Men is about, right?
Well, yeah, it's no country for old men.
Yeah.
Things happen in today's world that you can't even wrap your head around.
Yeah, so I guess in some sense he's been telling the same story. His early books, The Orchard Keeper, Suttree, those seem to be him retelling Faulkner stories.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the grotesqueness of, is it The Mansion, the one with Popeye?
Oh, Sanctuary. Is what's it called?
Sanctuary, yeah. He had the mansion, right? Was that not? Am I thinking of someone else?
He had a book called The Mansion, or
Well, they're
Popeye had a
they're
mansion.
in a mansion, and yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of an old decrepit kind of Texas Chainsaw House, I think. But
anyways, and Faulkner has stories like that.
Mhm.
So really, early Cormac McCarthy is just coming to terms, becoming a writer under the tutelage of Faulkner, and then he finds what he wants to write about. And I think Blood Meridian's getting there, but all the pre-horses is where he really comes to terms with it, which is this idea between the dying of the old world and the new world. And I think Cormac McCarthy has strong sympathies and wishes that the old world could stay that way.
Although doesn't the old world suck? I mean, the grandmother comes from the old world where nobody treated women right, and they're all just a bunch of.
I think Cormac McCarthy lives out in the middle of El Paso without a computer.
Yeah, but the old world's like the Blood Meridian world. I mean, I don't know what there is to mourn there. There's ultimately, I think everything just sucks. It's just two different kinds of things that suck. But I haven't actually captured his philosophy because he is mourning something. But heck, if I know what. The same thing I am, I guess. I mean, I respond to the American sort of Americana of it all, the myth making.
Yeah, you mentioned that you don't want to see that Old West die, but you go out and try to find it, you're not going to find it.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think that ushers us rather nicely into the Hall of Heroes.
Oh, John Grady Cole.
Isn't that the point?
What's that?
Sorry. I mean, if Faulkner was his inspiration ultimately, and Faulkner's writing about the Old South, which is dead, and had things to mourn the loss of, and had something to try to cope with, in its history and reconcile. I mean, the Old West has a mythology, but also you get down to the root of it, and how romantic is it really? There's still a nostalgia. There's still something, and the nostalgia may not be rooted in anything that's real. That seems like the point.
Yeah, like we still need to. I mean, this is a corny way of saying it, but it's like, we need to tell ourselves the story still, even if it was barbaric when you actually get down to it.
Yeah.
It's almost like, what's the Print the Legend movie? The man who shot
Liberty Valance.
Yeah, I think there's something to that for sure. The Hall of Heroes, though, John Grady Cole. What an interesting guy.
Yep.
I mean, maybe he was. I don't know. Fight me. He's good. He's laconic. He's a Western hero kind of dude. I like him.
He's good with horses.
He's good with horses. He's got like a magical horse force.
I mean, he represents this desire to be able to stay in the Old West. He doesn't want that ranch to get sold. And so then decides on a whim to go off to Mexico with a friend. He's definitely the kind of character you would want to be able to tell a story like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always, he loves the ardent hearted. Is that what he says?
Probably.
That thing about him. I think that Cormac McCarthy makes that comment about him, but where is that? It's towards the beginning. I think if there's any morality to the story as to why, this is his particular hero, it's because he would always love the ardent hearted. Do you guys remember this line? Or am I crazy?
No, I don't.
It sounds familiar.
Where is it? I probably just look it up.
Yep. I think I just found it.
Go ahead.
All his reverence and all his fondness and all the leanings of his life were for the ardent hearted, and they would always be so and never be otherwise.
Yeah. What he loved in horses was what he loved in men. The blood and the heat of the blood that ran them. And so I think that, in essence, if you're trying to, with Hemingway, you can find those loves of things that make the men for Hemingway. Here, I think this is kind of what drives Cormac McCarthy's appreciation for figures like this, that it isn't a love of ideas. It's just the love of the heat of the blood that runs these things, and the ardency and the fervor, the desire to really live.
I mean, it's almost existentialism in its most naked form. It's just it doesn't really matter what you're going after, but if you can go after it strongly.
Live with strength and courage and vitality.
Right. John Grady wanted something.
I mean, if you're trying to figure out what makes John Grady a hero, right, it's that he gives himself fully to what he's after. He pursues it with courage and diligence. And for the most part, he seems to have some principles.
Right.
Right.
He's got some kind of code.
Yeah.
It's his own code.
But it's a code.
But it's code.
Yep.
And the villains, I guess, if we're the villains' lair, if we're just going to mix them, right? The villains are the ones that don't live.
Right.
Dracula.
Well, the captain, I guess, if he's our villain, he has a code. His code is no one's ever going to get the better of me again.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't he kind of explicitly say that at some point? Like,
Yeah.
they laughed at me once. I forget what he says, but something like that.
But also the guys in the prison, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of ruthlessness and inevitability and the animal nature of men. I mean, Cormac McCarthy sees that as being a reality because that's kind of who Anton Chigurh represents.
Right.
It's not like he likes it. It's just this inevitable fact of life that there's almost a judgment quality that's just the brutality of life. And that they're in this particular book represented by the captain, represented by the Mexican law, represented by the prison, whatever it is. And John Grady Cole gets to test his manhood against this by how does his code of ethics, how does his strength, how does he hold up against it?
Right.
It's pretty similar to what would happen with what's the main character in, not the sheriff, but the other guy in No Country for Old Men.
Oh, yeah. Josh Brolin, whoever.
I forget his name, but he kind of is he's just another John Grady Cole. And you get to test and see how do your principles and your ability to last as long as you can.
Yeah, I think it's just endurance. It's your life is going to punish you. It's going to keep punishing you, and then it's going to punish you some more. And if you can stand there and take it and keep taking it, then that's what makes you a hero.
And if you can take it without inflicting it on anyone who doesn't somewhat deserve it, right?
Yeah.
Only give violence back to those who seek it.
And if you cannot whine about it, his friend whines about it. But if you can have that nice American John Wayne understatement.
Yeah. Those are the things that he seems to admire. Right.
Yeah. And that's every Cormac McCarthy.
It's like a postmodern John Wayne
hero. Yeah. I guess we're in the villain's lair. Anybody want to say anything about the sheriff or not the sheriff? What is he? The captain or?
Not other than what I just said. Yeah.
I like the grandmother. I mean, her dialogue is great.
Would you put her in the villain category?
I mean, she tears our young lovers apart.
I guess then, yeah.
She gets him carted off to prison. She should know. She should have sympathy for him. She was denied her great love, but it's curdled her into anger and vindictiveness at the world, and she wants her. Yeah, I mean, she's played and cast sympathetically. Like she
sings "Let It Go" in her Frozen Castle.
She sings "Let It Go" in her Frozen Castle. I mean, you get it. You get who she is. I think she's far and away the most interesting character in terms of. I actually like to hear this person talk. It's fun to read that dialogue. She feels very authentic.
Yeah. Well, with the Mexican stuff, though, you also see Hemingway's influence pretty significantly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and with her too, she reminded me a little bit of what's her face from For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yes.
Pilar.
Yeah. Yeah. This whole book made me think of For Whom the Bell Tolls, and never in a way that was complimentary to For Whom the Bell Tolls, I don't think.
No, yeah, I think this one might.
For Whom the Bell Tolls has a couple individual scenes of warfare that this book doesn't have, simply because it's not about that, but that maybe are better. But this book certainly does the for lack of a better word, the erotic stuff better than, and it does
made me think of For Whom the Bell Tolls,
right?
Too.
Well, it kind of it has the same kind of thing, which is we're going to make love, and the book's going to describe it in some weirdo, metaphor, something about the coldness of the moon and the water and all this stuff. And I'm going to try and make it pretty erotic, but not actually get biological. And I think for what it's worth, which is maybe not much, Cormac McCarthy does that sort of thing much more elegantly than stupid Hemingway. Although he had Hemingway to look at and build on, and easy to make fun of the world turning scene and For Whom the Bell Tolls, but he had it to make fun of and then one up. Yay, Cormac. Yeah. I don't remember what else I was going to say, but yeah, there's any number of places. The grandmother conversations, having a character in dialogue creates such a complete world for you, and you're genuinely interested to just hear this character keep talking. That was similar to Pilar, or Pablo, I think was the dude's name in For Whom the Bell Tolls. Any other secondary characters you guys want to talk about? We are in the crawl way of secondary characters.
Blevins is pretty fun.
And Blevins is fun.
Blevins being the kid, right?
Yeah.
I get them confused.
And it's sad when Blevins
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dies. Yeah.
Yeah. That part made me sad. I almost didn't want to read this book again just because I knew that was going to happen and it was going to make me sad.
Yeah.
And it did. Yeah. He's good. I don't know what else to say about him. I mean, I don't know, that sort of Western archetype of the impetuous kid who throws away his life. John Wayne movies and Clint Eastwood movies are full of these kinds of characters.
Yep.
Guy who talks tough and has some real talent, but can't quite actually was basically just bred to die. Like the second Blevins sets foot in this world, he's going to die. It's only a matter of how and when. Those characters are interesting. But let's see, any other secondary characters? I like the little portrait of his dad at the beginning. His dad and his mom. That stuff's well handled. I don't know. What about the twists and turns? So many twists and turns.
There aren't too many twists and turns in this book.
Well, he gets carted off to jail.
Yeah, most of it seems, with Cormac McCarthy, a lot of things just seem inevitable.
It is the problem it's the same problem I have with Greek tragedy. Fatalism kind of it's like, there's no way this girl's going off with him. That's just not the choice he's going to make. That's not the choice Cormac McCarthy would ever make for his character. Therefore,
and you know that when Blevins shows up, that even though he's a likable character, bad things are going to happen because he shows up.
Yeah.
Right. You just know that these things are going to happen. And so there's this, you're right. He does write. So we mentioned King James Bible with the language, but there's also sort of just an undercurrent of Greek tragedy to his works, or Shakespearean tragedy, where you just feel like, yes, this was what was going to happen.
I think it's more Greek. I mean, Shakespeare, it's always like, well, actually, Macbeth could have made a different choice, but he's a moron.
Exactly.
So
John
choice.
Grady Cole is kind of just wrapped up in fate, and there's nothing he can do to escape it.
Right.
And the best he can hope to do, which I think is the best that Cormac McCarthy hopes anybody can do, is just push against it for as long as you can.
Courage is grace under fire. I mean, it's just Hemingway. Brand existentialism. Push against it, stand up to it, have a little bit of a sense of humor about it. It's the American way.
Yeah, and it kind of shows the emptiness of the American ethics.
Yeah.
Because if this is all there is, then yikes.
I mean, does Cormac McCarthy actually think it's showing the emptiness, or is this he's just like, yep, that's life. There you go.
I think he thinks this is just life, because over and over again, this is what his characters are faced with. And it seems like each book is just asking those characters to be tested against what they're able to do in face of it. So, yeah, I don't think he has I think as far as ethics go, it's like, he is like Hemingway to that extent that he doesn't have a whole lot to offer. Right.
No.
So
he may be the most purely fatalistic author we've read. I'm not
I think that has to be true. I can't think of anybody more fatalistic, more nihilistic, more just it's all written, it's all destined, and then it's over and gone and is meaningless.
Yep.
Yeah. There's maybe a little flicker of beauty in the way that you handle it, but whatever, you're going to get ground up by the machine eventually.
Yeah.
You can just do it gracefully or do it poorly, but either way, you will rot in the same dirt as the rest of us.
Yeah. Either way, you will be chewed up. Yeah.
But unlike many authors we've read, he doesn't give you a lot of hope for even finding a little happiness before that happens. Like I said, there's no way Alejandra is going to say, yes, it's not her destiny as the God of this universe decrees it, to say yes to John Grady to go off and marry him and be happy for a little while before you could have a little bit more of a Tim Schul ending where it's like, yeah, everything sucks, but we can actually make our own happiness. And Cormac McCarthy's more like, nah, you can make your own happiness for maybe 5 minutes, but then the angry gods of the universe will catch up with you and you will pay for it a lot.
Yep. You'll be going to the bathroom and that's where they catch up with you.
Well, in a weird way, I would say Blood Meridian feels more hopeful to me because at least he gets to sit at the bar and talk to the judge and say, you ain't nothing. I mean, that's a real thumb in the eye of fate. John Grady Cole doesn't. Yeah, before a terrible.
He turns around and gets screwed by fate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But John Grady Cole doesn't even get that much. John Grady Cole doesn't get a big triumphant moment of sticking his thumb in the eye of fate. I would say the characters in No Country and the characters in Blood Meridian do get a little bit of that. All right. Twists and turns. Those were some great twists and turns. Hey, it's the Salon of Style. Part of the show where we talk about the style.
He ain't no Dennis Johnson, but he's a master.
I just, yeah. He's pretty good. He's pretty good.
Just really, I mean.
There's not a lot to say about it. But yeah, again, I mean, style is just what makes his style work, Nathan.
What makes his style work? That's
It's a whole lot of magic.
A whole lot of magic, yeah. Good question.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the thing that we talked about. What's it called again? Polysynthetic syntax, right? There's that. But there's just so many little things like he refuses to use punctuation and you always know who's talking. And
yeah, what probably makes his style work as much as anything is careful and
very
copious revision and
yeah, a ton of elbow grease.
Right.
There's no way to pull this off without just like maximal effort.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, what else would I say about how his style works? I mean, he is very cinematic. He does in terms of simply giving you images and not giving you hardly any interiority for these characters. I mean, I think he might be the most cinematic writer we've read in terms of somebody who really just spends, I'm not saying he never does it, although maybe he doesn't. I just didn't think to notice. But very rarely does he tell you what a character's thinking. And if he does, it's kind of more a big picture authorial speculation on, you know, John Grady stood and the world turned before him and big things were happening.
Yeah, but it's just a whole lot of showing.
Mm-hmm. And very little telling.
And the only telling that you get is in what you would hear from the character himself.
Right.
Right. So you're just there engaging with these characters the way you would any other person. And you don't get a window into their soul except for the one they reveal. And
it's actually somewhat similar in that sense, not to all of Tolstoy, but often Tolstoy will do this effect where the thing we always quote, the I hate you and everyone and his eyes said,
yeah,
he's really just giving you the moment as you would observe it if you were an invisible spectator in the room. And then he'll jump in and give you a giant monologue of Pierre or whoever. But oftentimes, especially in the scenes where people are talking and stuff, Tolstoy just stands there and tells the story as though you're in the room with the greatest observer of all time. And the greatest observer is just observing this and observing that and observing the other thing. And there's actually, it's like he's such an effective observer in the way that he places you there that you feel the interiority, like you understand what Levin's thinking. But he doesn't actually tell you what Levin's thinking. And Cormac McCarthy does a similar thing, but much more spare and American and kind of, I'm really not going to tell you what he's thinking. Actually, it doesn't even matter what he's thinking. What's interesting is that you don't know. Mm-hmm. You don't actually know how much pain this guy is in right now. He's just lighting another cigarette. And he's also a master of something that's been a part of the pulp tradition forever and the American kind of tough guy vernacular, which is understatement in dialogue. Mm-hmm. Just like, how you feeling? Not so good. I mean, that's not a real example, but if somebody had their guts hanging out in a McCarthy book and you ask them how they're feeling, they'll say, I've been better. You know, they're not going to say, I'm in great pain because my guts are hanging out. They'll say, I've been better. That's a stupid example.
Or they'll just say, shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
Or screw you.
Every line of the conversations between him and his friend, whatever the guy's name is, that I always get confused with, Blevins. Rollins, yeah. It's just that. It's just...
There are 5 things that pass between the actual lines of dialogue for you to pick up.
Right. And
so it is like, how you feeling? Screw you.
Right.
And that's supposed to tell you a whole lot, actually. And it tells you something about their relationship, too.
Right.
And so it's just showing you something that's more developed and more real in that sense, more true to life. And if you are a good enough observer of people, then you learn a whole lot about this relationship between how you doing, screw you, or whatever the actual thing he would do is. But that's the kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's a very American way of writing dialogue. It's very genre way of writing dialogue. It's very a Western way of writing dialogue. And Cormac McCarthy is just about the best at it of anyone you could name. I mean, it's very Hemingway. It's very Hills with White Elephants, that sort of thing, where we know exactly what these characters are talking about, but they never actually say the word. I don't know. Anything else to say about his style? I guess the only other thing I would say is it is a happy thing that he is attached to a genre that can handle these kinds of big swings into the stars wheeled above him like a whatever.
Yeah.
It's like one of the things that we made fun of about when we made fun of purple prose. It's not that every metaphor that what's his face, something wicked guy reaches for
Ray Bradbury
is bad. It's just that they don't belong in this homey little small town situation. They don't help you understand these boys and stuff as much as Cormac McCarthy is like, he rode his horse, and riding behind him were all the ancestors of all the cowboys that have ever rode horses. And we're like, yeah, I get that, because I've been to the Museum of American Art and I've seen cowboy movies, and this genre.
Dad and Grandpa loved John Wayne and
right.
Whatever.
Our feelings about this genre match the big swings he's going for. Well, I think we've already talked about this, but the haven of reflection upon deeper meaning. It's the haven of reflection upon deeper meaning.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you want to take a nap, doesn't it?
I think you might be sending Jake right over the edge.
Let's see if we can get him. Let's play this a couple more times.
Deeper meaning, man. I think we've talked about it.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to what we just said.
Yeah. Just listen to the episode again.
Quit being lazy.
Yeah. Don't be lazy.
Don't expect us to draw all the threads.
Well, these guys refuse to draw threads because they only read a Wikipedia summary and obviously don't like the book. 1 star.
Well, that means you've never read Cormac McCarthy, because he doesn't draw all the threads together. Like the Blood Meridian has one of the most ambiguous endings of any book I've ever read.
He's dancing with that bear, and that guy's making holes for some reason.
I have no clue what's going on at the end of that book.
I have no clue what's going on at the
I
end of
assume that
those.
something horrid happened, but
I mean, I think I know what happened to the kid, but I don't know why that guy's making holes or exactly why the judge is dancing with the bear. Anyway, yeah, fate, man.
fate.
It catches up with you.
But man, you can fight against it, and that fighting can be its own glory. There you go.
Touch those pine needles.
Touch those pine needles. Touch them. Touch them.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Well, Brandon, how many pretty horses out of 93 do you give to all the pretty horses?
83.
83.
83.
Wow.
8,083 out of 90.
80.83.
You loved this book. Did you recommend that people read it?
If they're going to read a Cormac McCarthy, sure.
If they're going to read a Cormac McCarthy, is this the one?
If they're only going to read one, no, read The Road.
Yeah, really?
I guess. I don't know.
You know, I don't love The Road. Maybe I was projecting.
I didn't love The Road either, but at least I think it has the least offensive stuff in it.
I was being a dirty projector when I said Jake probably didn't like The Road. What I really meant was I don't care that much about The Road.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something about when popular author or when these kinds of guys decide they're going to do their genre piece. It's like, you do realize a bunch of science fiction authors already wrote good post-apocalyptic stuff.
We don't need you to write your own version of The Walking Dead.
Right. And we don't need you to mess with our clone stuff, Ishiguro.
Yeah. Leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
Ishiguro. That book slowly is becoming the one that people say is his best.
I preferred it to Remains of the Day.
Huh?
I preferred it to Remains of the Day.
It's like every time I see his name on a list, that's slowly starting to get higher than Remains of the Day.
I mean, it's much more accessible instead of some dumb story about a
butler.
Nazi butler.
An OCD Nazi butler. Yeah. It's a story about
it may end up being the one that he's remembered for.
I think that it and Remains of the Day probably.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt that it Remains of the Day has a Anthony Hopkins movie. That'll keep it in the conversation for longer, maybe. But yeah, Never Let Me Go is probably his masterpiece. I don't know.
It's great.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Talk about fatalism
that old
done well.
Ishiguro. Man, get him and Cormac McCarthy and Dennis Johnson in a room together, and
oh man, the three people I'd like to meet in heaven.
I guess it might stink because Johnson's a corpse.
Yeah,
I was going to make that joke if you weren't.
Johnson would stink.
Yeah.
But Cormac McCarthy and Ishiguro would probably have an awkward conversation.
Yeah, that would be funny.
Yeah, it would be funny to see two guys have an awkward conversation over the corpse of Dennis Johnson.
It would probably end with Cormac McCarthy dancing with a bear.
Well, that would be good.
Yeah. You don't know what happens to
Be
Shiguro.
interesting.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't know. But he'd sure start to write a novel about it. And then 10 years later, have written a novel about something.
Who is Shiguro?
Yeah, Shiguro. Jake, how many horses? That's awful. Jake, how many pretty horses out of 97 do you give to...
Why does he get 97? I got 93.
Because I don't remember what I gave you. Fine. How many horses out of 9,000 do you give to all the pretty horses?
87,000.
Brandon just indicated something very rude off mic, and I am personally very offended. How many pretty horses?
87,000.
Out of how many?
90,000.
Okay, that's good.
That's a good score.
All right.
Thanks. I'm glad you approve of the score.
You give it an A, but not an A+. plus.
That's right.
And out of 900 pretty horses, I'm giving it one ugly horse. This book sucks. No, it's good. I don't know. Whatever. It's fine.
If you were grading it in an MFA program, would it get an A?
Yes. Okay. Yes, it would. I think it's fairly well done.
Well, yeah, I think this gets an A. Maybe an A minus.
You're gonna give
Could have been some more commas.
Yeah, a few more comments.
Cormac McCarthy passes your MFA class.
Yeah.
You know,
That's very big.
I would appreciate some quotation marks. I think it is
Come on, Cormac.
It's
very
a little pretentious.
A minus.
affected to not use quotation marks.
That's the thing about.
That's what we should start doing.
Really is just straight up affected poser
Yeah.
who pulls it off. Like it's easy to resent, but hard to deny.
Yeah, I listened to it this time. Spoiler alert. And it is, I don't know what McCarthy book I'd actually tell people to read. This one's not my favorite, as you could probably tell. I mean, I love it, but it's certainly the cleanest. So it's got that going for it.
Yep.
I know Country might be the one that is not so violent in the way that it's written that, but I don't know. The movie's actually better. What do? What's the entry point? Maybe the road is the entry point, but I just don't love the road.
I'm with you. I'm not excited by that option. This might be the one.
Yeah, I think this is probably the entry point. If you just want like a good sampling of what McCarthy does in a non-toxic package, it's pretty good. Speaking of non-toxic packages, our patrons at the $50 level get those in the mail.
That we have not contaminated with swine flu.
No, that's true because they've got books in them.
Yeah.
The books that we're going to be reading, in fact. And isn't that fun? But for $10 a month, we'll give you a Bookening donor shout out, which we're about to give to people. So let's do it. You go to patreon.com/the Bookening to get these kinds of donor shout outs. And we've got donors such as Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds.
Yep. That's one of them.
The Artful Anthony Dodger and Bootstrap Betsy.
I agree. Keep going.
Little Anthony Cigar Store.
Good job.
The Immortal Chelsea E.
Well done.
Jimmy Beam and Little Annie Oakley.
Bravo.
Lily of the Valley.
Congratulations.
And Ernesto the Lovebirds.
Great job.
The Creath Master.
Hey.
Hey. John and Jill and Little Baby Max.
Yo.
Jay and Kitty were Cold and Loves Cheese and also C.S. Lewis and Cooling Till We Have Faces.
Bravo. No, I already said bravo. Yeah.
Fairy Princess of Wonder and Happiness Mother Beth.
Yay.
Consul Prime Adam.
Yay.
Nathan Not Me.
Yay.
Ryan the Red Avenger. Who else? What manly man just walked in and started helping with this? Ryan the Red Avenger and Judith of the Ladies of Justice.
Yay.
So pleased to see you accomplishing great things.
DJ Sammy G.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Benny and Dana Tiberius.
This calls for celebrating.
Did you look up like a lame list of...
It appears that he might have, yes.
No, this is just how Brandon talks to his employees, I'm guessing. Eric and Catherine from Beyond Window Breaks.
You did it.
Lavender's Green, Dylan.
So proud of you.
Noah Constrictor.
I knew it was only a matter of time.
Till what? I don't know. Mara Cheap.
Well done.
Anthony is cold and hates life, liberty, the pursuit of cheese.
Warmest congratulations on your achievement.
Warmest congratulations on your achievement, Anthony. Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey the Texas Ranger.
Congratulations and best wishes for your next adventure.
Midnight Ninja Ellen.
So pleased to see you accomplishing great things.
Is he just from like cards? Is one of these going to be so happy for your bar mitzvah?
Oh, it's getting better.
Jay of Rack and Ruin.
Hope you're thrilled about your new job. I sure am happy for you.
Eric and Kate, the Cape James Kings, who are warm and love bees.
We just couldn't be happier for you.
Matt, man.
It makes me so happy to think about your promotion.
Sweet Jay. Why would you say that to an employee? I've been thinking about your promotion, and it makes me so happy.
This comes from the Hallmark people, so this is great.
Right. Tyler, the Keeper of Eternal Darkness, Laura, the Keeper of Eternal Light.
I couldn't have come to a more deserving person.
Cold Steel Cody.
Feeling so much joy for you today.
Jack the Librarian Barbarian.
What an impressive achievement. Let's keep going.
John Bobadilla, Bob Diggity, and Captain Tadil, his mate.
Oh my goodness. We hope you can feel all the pride and happiness surrounding you as you head off to medical school.
The other saxophone, Alex, and dubstep Danny.
Simply overjoyed to hear your good news.
Ryan, the Terror of Texas, and Eric of the Cream and Crimson, who no longer are stuck in the cold. Please send cheese, though.
You've worked so hard for this.
Ben Solo and Kylo Ren.
Congrats.
John the Cosmic King of Chaos.
This is awesome.
Matthew the Mind Flayer.
You're awesome.
And are you okay? Get your gun.
Way to go.
Flight of the Valerie.
Congratulations to my new favorite homeowner.
Thor Ragnajosh.
With your oh man, with your touch, it's going to look amazing.
Stephen Dot.
Bet you thought no one would notice you've hit your goal 30 days in a row.
Peglodon.
Well, I did. And I'm impressed.
What is this list? Like, what is this? Who is this for?
This is just
Affirmation?
people who can't think of what to put in their greeting card.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a Google list for that?
Oh, yeah.
my
It's
goodness.
on Hallmark.com.
Peglodon.
Keep it up.
Christopher the Flower Hope.
You are proof that good things come to those who are willing to sacrifice to reach a worthwhile goal.
Lady of the Crystal Lake.
Words can't express how proud I am. Yet they just did.
I'm imagining somebody writing some of these like in a bereavement card. Ian, the Death of Miriam, Lord of Death.
You have the creativity and determination to do whatever you can dream.
Mysterious Phantom.
I hope you feel proud today and confident in your ability to rise to your next challenge.
Jeremy, the Dark Hooded Lord of Death, and his brooding bride, Maya.
Maya! Celebrating the dedication you've shown on the way to this achievement.
Remains the J.
You've earned every bit of the success you're enjoying.
Abram, the puller of teeth.
I've got a feeling this is only the beginning of even more great things to come for you.
La Mort de Trenton.
Celebrating the record you just set and looking forward to watching you cross your next finish line.
Oh, my goodness. Daniel, a man among men, and Jen, who strikes again every now and then.
I commend you on this latest success.
All right. Any final thoughts, Jake?
Nope.
Any final thoughts, Brandon?
The reward of a thing well done is to have done it.
That explains this podcast. Goodbye, folks.
Goodbye.
Bye.